Hi, I'm young Bob, the notorious 17-year-old who's been arrested twice, been made homeless, been sacked from my job and kicked out of college. Now, what does a delinquent who's quite broken do in politics but start the far-right grift of starting a podcast? It'll be broken down into three sections: topical news, going through what I've done on the ground, and of course the debates that I've done on the debate stands, some exclusive clips.
If anyone believes in abortion, please approach the mic.
I think that this show is going to be a start of this sort of American-esque empire of networking with other young people. I think that the Overton window has already been shifted from Reform UK towards the right of politics, but we need to shift it even further towards the Christian faith, because of course conserving nothing in terms of spirituality is conserving absolutely nothing materially. So I think we need Christianity. I think that we need to import to a degree American conservatism, although that might be a controversial statement to make. But yeah, let's go into the first section, which is the news. So it's been a jam-packed series of news events today. Of course, it sparked off with the UKIP demo originally being banned from Tower Hamlets, of course having a 75% Muslim population. Nick Tenconi, the leader, is a man I notoriously know from back in the Turning Point days. He is the chief executive officer, and he was planning to do a crusade to reclaim Tower Hamlets from Islamism.
There is only one solution left for Britain, and that is a crusade, for the war we are in is a holy war. I want the Islamists gone, I want the communists gone, and I want the invaders gone. As God is my witness, we will see that happen, and we will take our country back.
Then the counter-protests, which wanted to split off in both Tower Hamlets and also central London in Knightsbridge, which is where UKIP relocated their protest, was then Section 14'd again, Section 14 being legislation brought in under the Tory government to restrict where you can protest and when you can protest, essentially conditions to control your civil liberties to protest. In which case the protest was successful. Over 200 people were marching through Knightsbridge to Speaker's Corner, an area which of course is highly multicultural, but just being played now is footage of what looks to be a militant radical Islam faction within Tower Hamlets, of course all ballied up. Social media campaigns to sell the ballies for £5 each. I think that's more of a threatening tactic. Of course, I saw one where a gentleman had said,
"No face, no case." What's going on, my people? In all our shops, alhamdulillah, this Saturday, inshallah, if you guys need it, £5 each. My brothers, please start buying them now. I don't want you to come the day before and find out that we have run out. I want to be able to facilitate this for the ends, inshallah.
To ensure that if these people committed the antisocial crimes that they of course did on that day, they wouldn't be prosecuted by the police. But if they want to facilitate an Islamic takeover of Tower Hamlets, they've already done it through refusing someone that doesn't believe that Islam should entrench themselves in areas of London to protest, to talk about the very basic thing of not wanting this unholy alliance between the left, Islam, even though we've seen with your party, it's not working because they're socially conservative politically, but they only really share on the whole Gaza issue. If it wasn't for the fact that Palestine is going through its trials as it is in the Middle East, I don't think at all they'd be on the table talking with one another on a policy platform. But we'll see how that kind of transgresses with the Your Party and the unions. There is a clip that I'm just going to show you right now of a gentleman from Stand Up to Racism saying, and I quote, "We're on your side," in which several Bangladeshi gentlemen said, "No, you're not."
No need for that. We're on the same side, bro.
No, we're not.
Yes, we are, bro.
Now this clip kind of demonstrates one thing, that these people that aren't on the street, that aren't the activists who have something politically to gain, they don't really care. Seeing this scrawny gentleman in a high vis with "We're standing up to racism," they don't really care about these people. And this is what's going to happen. It's going to be an implosion of this political platform. Now we're just going to go into the rise of the Green Party, or eco-populism, And I think that if they start slowly, and of course the deputy leader was the one who, when he won his seat, he screamed Allahu Akbar, and that this is a victory for Gaza.
Raise the voice of Palestine! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
So once they start importing more Muslims into the left, I think what we're going to see is a glorious takeover of what they would label transphobia, homophobia. Of course, they're against sodomy. So yeah, it's a self-destruction of the unholy alliance seen on the ground from what we saw of the thugs at Tower Hamlets. But let's just go towards the actual UKIP demo itself. When I was on the ground that day, what we saw was a small outpatch of people from Antifa, Stand Up to Racism. They were slowly being arrested. Just before the march actually commenced, we had 4 arrests from people who didn't get the memo that they weren't allowed in central London. And this is when we draw into the notorious clip that got over 1 million views on my Twitter of me being beamed in the face. Yeah, so as you can tell, quite comedically, so I've just been beamed in the face. Now, the Heinz Beans family are not very happy, and I think in the second segment of the show, we're going to digress more into the legal action that this crazy therapist wants to take. But all I'm saying is this: if she wants to sue a homeless 17-year-old, I'll give her whatever she thinks is intrinsically valuable, because I actually want to find out what I have value in myself, besides for my good wits, good looks, and good imagination. Going into the next story, the Green Party hitting a historical 150,000 members. That's more than the Conservatives, creaking up towards Labour in terms of numbers. And the reason is this, is that if we look outside of mainland Europe, because of course we were impacted by post-World War II political history, popularism is on the rise in the right. Most young people are voting for the Alternative for Deutschland, other right-wing populist movements in France, the Netherlands. But in the UK, where we're private citizens, we don't really care about other people's politics, the left have kind of been able to entrench themselves off this platform of social justice because they talk about things that are actually concerned for young people. Drastic wealth inequality, the fact that we can't buy a house. Now, I'm not saying that what the left say on how to solve these issues, for example, quite weirdly wanting to disarm ourselves. But what I am saying is talking about these things, unlike Farage, is a great thing.
My milkshake brings all the people to the rally.
So they've reached a historical membership base. Of course, membership will never convert into electoral victory. If we actually look, Reform had big numbers going towards next general election last year, and they barely picked up any seats. So it would be interesting to see how the Greens actually split the vote when it comes to historical constituencies that have always been won over by Labour. We've just seen that the local Grafini by-elections have drastically switched towards a very moderate Labour seat, towards an area which is now voting in a political party which actually wants to see an independent Wales. So having Welsh nationalism part of the front towards Labour is a drastic voter difference when it comes to what is now being seen as a mass exodus of traditional establishment political parties. In second, we of course had Reform, which has stood for the very first time in that Welsh constituency. And going forward towards the May Senate elections, it looks like it's going to be a break between Reform UK and Plaid Cymru, which drastically have different political ideologies. So whoever can win the young people, in my eyes, will win. Greens are actually tactically voting. We had the Green candidate for the Grafini by-elections very happy with his modest outcome, even though he actually lost votes on that day because, of course, they were tactically voting towards Plaid Cymru. Now, what's come in very recently is the fact that they're actually taking what the Lib Dems are actually voting for in terms of setting up Nightingale facilities for asylum applicants, both in Sussex and Inverness. They're using abandoned army barracks, a policy which was originally brought in via the Tories before, of course, selling out the British public for hotels. They are now using army barracks in these two areas to house over 900 asylum applicants, drastically decreasing the cost of what, if you look at, for example, the Britannia International Hotel, over £90 per person in each hotel. So, although this is a win for a lot of areas which will no longer have these economic friends of ours, we have to ask two questions. Firstly, what hotels are actually going to shift these people? And secondly, why aren't we just deporting these people? I mean, the left are always going to go on about a humanitarian crisis. That's why originally we started moving these people onto hotels. So why aren't we moving these people out of the country where their safety is no longer our concern? We just saw that that violently sexually assaulted the 14-year-old in Epping was on the run. He was very obviously in prison clothing, in an evidence bag, being deported back to his home country. Thank goodness for that.
Saturday, I get a police. Look here. Please, I am wanted man. I arrested. I will give you my hand.
Then he just left from Chelmsford all the way to central London.
The Metropolitan Police told Sky News the Met is not aware of any evidence to support the claims that Kabatu approached officers on Saturday morning.
With regular feeds of CCTV footage of the man walking around the place using government-funded subsidies and money in order to get to London. However, it took days before the Met Police handed over the gentleman. As these migrant hotel protests are kind of declining because it's out of the summertime, we're still seeing a complete neglect and, of course, a spotlight that needs to be said about the failed project of mass migration by the Labour government. Of course, originally, we had the Labour government rhetorically shifting towards the right of politics, but now it seems like in a pathetic turnout, they are now trying to be bone idle when it comes to mass migration. In a story that has shooken no one, the Tony Blair Institute, the institute which was actually propped up through networking when Tony Blair was messing over the Middle East for the notorious weapons of mass destruction that turned out doesn't exist.
It concludes that Iraq has chemical and biological weapons, that Saddam has continued to produce them, that he has existing and active military plans for the use of chemical and biological weapons, which could be activated within 45 minutes, including against his own Shia population.
Is now suggesting a community points-based system with the introduction of digital ID. Now, Keir Starmer's kind of feeding into this notion of digital ID. He's now actually backpedaled in recent interviews with independent news journalists, admitting that they would no longer be mandatory, even though I don't think we can really trust him.
It will make your life easier if you want it, but you don't have to have it. We're consulting on what other forms of ID would help them. Again, it won't be mandatory. You can still use your passport or your birth certificate or your 3 bank accounts if you want, however many times. You can choose to pay £85 to a company to prove that you are who you are every time you need to.
Now, there has already been a mass showing of not being compliant towards this system. Everyone has identification when they're an adult. It's kind of an expectation. You either have a passport or driving license, so you can set up bank accounts, so you can apply for mortgages. All of these systems are already in place. You don't need to synthesize them with a mandatory digital ID, because in the UK, like I said before, we are private citizens. We like this idea that to a degree, although we kind of already live in a surveillance state, we have a degree of privacy. So that's being completely thrown out the window when Keir Starmer, of a very pathetic attempt to kind of revert the fact that he's very obviously trying to cozy up to reform voters to be like the new Blairite figure within the Labour Party. This, of course, has come before. Andy Burnham tried to, at the Labour Party conference, take over, having a leadership bid. We have no idea whether that's going to continue. So he wants to counteract Manchesterism, this degree of socialism that Andy Burnham believes in, overriding it with Blairism, this failed surveillance states, Middle Eastern intervention, and of course, overall crap show that the UK was in under his premiership. Now, considering it's Halloween, I think it would be in season to invite a very comedic guest, a good friend of ours from the United States. We all love him, we all know him, and of course it didn't take a huge protest in central London when he came here for the second time. May I introduce the very special guest, Donald J. Trump. Of course, you've made the very private trip down here to the third time in the United Kingdom. Will you be visiting our great and beautiful Prime Minister?
Well, firstly, I'd wanted to meet Bob, we call him Big Bob. He's doing a great thing. He looks like my son, Baron Trump. But you know, your Prime Minister is incredibly gay.
Mr. Trump, I saw that you did the Times magazine. They didn't get such a great angle of what many are labelling your bald head. What do you think about your age, considering the fact that you're one of the oldest presidents?
Now, firstly, baldness is fake news. Crooked Joe, he was balding terrifically. He had a bad bit of hair, but I've got great hair. So many people like my hair. They buy it even.
Mr. Trump, you said you'd get Hillary done. When's ICE going to be showing up at her property?
Hillary is a dog. She treats her supporters in a terrible way. ICE will be at her house. We've got nets and dogs because she is one. And we'll be dispatching that soon, and she'll be taken to Guatemala.
Into the second section of the show. This is what I do on the ground. It's bobbing around season. A lot of people know for what I do, but they never really sympathize it with, oh, I know him because he does these sorts of things. It's rather spontaneous. So I thought I might do the pleasure of going through on a weekly basis what I've actually done. So it's actually been quite busy for me. On Friday we did a stand at Camden Town for abortion. We had a gentleman say that he actually cares more about blades of grass than he does people. Then randomly, halfway through the day, gave me a plot of flowers apologising and saying that you're doing a great job. The second thing was on a Saturday, we had the UKIP deportation tour, something we already talked about in the first section of the show. It went really well, a lot of recognition from the UKIPers. I'm not UKIP myself, but I have a great relationship with Nick. I have a deep admiration for his activism. It seems like I see him more than I do my own partner sometimes, which is incredibly unfortunate. The third day on a Sunday was, of course, the Southampton Patriots. With other famous activists such as Danny Tomo.
Okay.
It was great. Even more people than the UKIP demonstration. I would say over 2,000 people showed up in response to sectarian violence on the street. Of course, right now you'll be seeing footage of a lovely, I think it was a woman who chucked a bottle of piss at us. This is something we always need to go through. These migrant hotel protests, they don't have any official organisation. They don't know how to set up protests. What started as a bunch of gentlemen gathering outside a hotel, of course not wanting to see rapists and sex offenders housed in 4-star resorts, has now been evolved into this great complexion of marches, petitions, factions like the Pink Ladies and Spartans raise the colours. And one of the things that they need to learn from, and maybe they can draw some inspiration from the Unite the Kingdom Tommy Robinson March, is that you need to go through and make sure that you know every vantage point that needs to be guarded by either security that you supply by yourself or the police. In the case of the Southampton Patriots, at several occasions throughout the demonstration, we had contacts with Stand Up to Racism and also contacts with beer bottles and piss with the bridge coming out from St. Denis train station. So it's a learning block. Wednesday, where we had the stand up for the persecuted Nigerian Christians, with over 50,000 Nigerian Christians being massacred because of the merit of their religion, because of the violent, militant Islamic terrorist organisation Boko Haram. Really need to ask ourselves, why is the white saviour complex always moving towards new conflicts and not historical ones that we actually have a degree of involvement over?
Metropolitan Police deciding to step down because of UKIP's march that is supposedly being threatened by Islamic community leaders, and with over 50,000 Nigerian Christians being butchered by the Islamic terrorist organization Boko Haram, I think it's very obvious to say that Islam, in terms of its morality, is not compatible with developed civilizations.
Nigeria, being a former colony of Europe, is now being persecuted by a foreign religion. Nigeria is a historical Christian land, and with thousands of Christians being butchered by Islamic invaders, why is it that firstly Nigeria, which has a constitution of a complete separation of religion, not doing anything when sectarian violence is on the rise? And secondly, why is this a discussion not commonly had amongst people here in the UK? We have streets packed with Palestinian protesters, but never Nigerian ones. And it's not of the fault of the left, because we vehemently disagree with these people, but it's also, of course, of the sin of the right. I mean, we're complaining that no one talks about it, so why aren't we? Why aren't we doing stands, campaigns, and forming unions surrounding the persecution of Nigerian Christians? It's not up for other people who do work on other countries to focus on points that we want to talk about. It's rather on us. So that was a protest organised by a group that I have heavy involvement under, the Disciples of Christ, headed up by the CEO of Turning Point UK, Jack Ross, and the leader of the United Kingdom Independence Party, Nick Tenconi. It was pretty well. We had about 50 people show up during the course of the working week. So it's good to see that many people turn up. There was actually a demonstration later that Friday by Christians singing prayers and giving supplications to God to make sure that Nigerian Christians are protected. Of course, their churches are raped and pillaged through Islamic invaders. So certainly to be a Christian in that area is at first explicitly Christian, to be persecuted for your faith. But secondly, a tremendous loss for the church and demonstrating that we don't have a backbone.
This video is sponsored by Defiance Records, fantastic music company with Ramis and Mad Mix and Trevor John. Great music, really non-woke stuff, none of this transgenderism and wokeism. My friend Elon would greatly recommend it. It's brilliant stuff. We love it so much. I love their music personally. It's all of the hits that I use at my conference, so please visit their music. It's great.
The
So the UKIP demo actually started at the mustering point at the London Observatory, which is near towards a Catholic church. I actually spoke to the father. Unfortunately, having a mixture of activists outside a historical Catholic institution is deeply unsettling for most people. The church isn't actually used to politics, but then we marched through Knightsbridge, which, if anyone knows Edgware Road, Hyde Park, all these areas, has a very much upper middle class, like Arab from like Saudi vibe. So they're not so welcoming, but they don't really care that they're the ones that are importing like these radicals because they don't want them in their developed countries here into Europe. So it was just good fun. Not as much violence as we would have had in Whitechapel, which for most people that wanted a dopamine rush that day was an incredible shame. For me, that was a sigh of relief that we didn't potentially start any race riots or whatever, tremendous cock-up we could have had. But yeah, it went tremendously well. Besides from the baked bean lady, this woman is a Camden Town therapist. We're going to quickly show into the fact that her phone line is now dead and she's actually delisted herself from the regulatory body for therapists.
Yeah, well, they're running down now. Yeah, so as you can tell, quite comedically, so I've just been beamed in the face for no reason. It was a family, her mother was encouraging it, and I think this is the generation that we're raising. The fact is that people genuinely believe that the next generation of fascists are marching down to Marble Arch for no reason whatsoever, beyond the fact that they disagree with them. I think the divisiveness on the left is more in line with the fascists of 1940s Germany than, of course, the right are. I think we're incredibly civil. We're the ones who kind of evolved civil discourse, but unfortunately, these people here are violent dogs.
Now, I made this observation within the video that she is, in fact, the mother of the what looks to be 15-year-old who chucked the open tin of beans in my face. Now, you would assume that, right? Unless you have this really inappropriate relationship where you influence kids to attack people, because before filming, you were the ones that were screaming that I am a fascist. So you're teaching children to have a poor emotional control whilst also falsely labeling people as an educated woman that I'm a fascist, which is great. Which is why I have no sympathies whatsoever. Of course, I don't believe in censorship. No one should go out their way of ruining her livelihood. But if it happens, what am I to complain about? It'd be like me complaining if I drill holes in Qurans that someone doesn't try to do anything to me. Like, although it shouldn't happen, and if you want to record what does happen in an unideal society, do it. But I have no sympathies for you whatsoever if it does happen. So she had sent several damning letters to the Turning Point UK team. Of course, I only serve as a contributory role towards that organisation, giving footage for free. So they have no legal responsibility over the posts that I indeed post myself, saying that they would sue the Turning Point UK team, in which case, unfortunately, due to legal concerns, I can't show those emails, but we sent a very nicely worded email reminding her that you're trying to sue a 17-year-old homeless boy, as she demanded that I make a retraction and apology. Now, I'll make an apology on the count that you weren't the person's mother, but it turns out you are the mother of the daughter that you were with. So it wasn't an inappropriate relationship, but rather a bad one in which you're incredibly irresponsible as both a therapist and also a mother. I mean, I'd never bring my kids to an activist demo, let alone encourage them to commit violence at these events. Now, of course, it's comedic. I'm getting called Bean Boy left, right, and centre. But unfortunately, these actions, as funny as they are, have consequences. Don't expect you to not be bombarded if you publicly promote your business whilst also publicly committing an act of childishness. I don't think your clientele, in which you potentially deal with severe emotions of distress, suicide, anxiety, issues of male loneliness, I don't think they would like to know that you call males, which predominantly lean towards the right, as the next generation of fascists. Now, going back towards the week before where Danny Tomer was kind of riling up patriots to march on Southampton.
So, we're a few days away from a mass demonstration in Southampton, and I want to send a clear message to the men of England. This is something you cannot and should not ignore.
It was in response to a bunch of Muslims which the internet labelled as the Muslim Defence League, of course an homage to the EDL, actually intimidating people as they're marching down in response to migrants attacking some of the Southampton patriots. Mr. Trump, I've seen that recently there are still a surge of what some would call leftards taking the vaccine. Are you still going to go for your annual booster shot to make sure that this ridiculous and numb disease doesn't get into your old body?
The Chinese, they make these things. When I buy things from China, they are terrible quality, like their viruses. The Kung flu, we call it. The Chinese virus. I said bleach, but they say vaccines. They're calling it vaccines now. Mandatory injections. Can you believe that, folks? We have to inject things into our veins. Why can't we do bleach?
What are you saying about your heavy involvement in the Epstein files, considering he is a convicted child pedophile?
Are we still talking about pedophilia?
The last segment of the show is what I like to call the talking points for the debate stands that I do. Now, I've been heavily focusing on the Christian aspect of Cross and Corner, being a Christian-centric organisation, talking about abortion. Now, in my eyes, we should always equally value a fetus regardless of the condition of its conception. So people typically turn towards, like, I don't know, not being able to afford birth. Now, it doesn't really matter. A fetus conceived from a lack of wealth compared to one which has a surplus of it is equally valued and has an equal state of living. There's no physical deformities in a baby that's poor compared to a baby that is rich. Second thing to consider would just be, well, what is actually considered human? It's a species of it. Something doesn't beget something of a different species. A dog will never beget a cat, for example, and in the same way I would never try to argue that a fetus isn't human. Now, if a human right is to survive, then I would consider the same right that a human fetus has is to survive within the womb of the mother, within the parameters of its feasibility. Medical exceptions are always there, but they're in very small cases, and trying to conflate abortions under medically necessary cases compared to ones which are out of the normative case is just ridiculous. Now, the reason why I fight so strongly for it is that when I originally started doing stands outside of Camden on abortion, it was made very clear that women, traditionally around my age, push for abortion drastically because of sexual promiscuity. They like this idea of having consensual sex with many sexual partners as possible because they believe that it should be without consequence. And I think that's deeply troubling. I think trying to run into a life of having a child and one sexual partner is a great thing from a young age. It's something that I would push most people to have because it grounds and settles you very quickly and teaches you to value things very fastly as well. I mean, people don't really know this paternal sense of protection without having children, so why not have it at a young age where you can kind of build off that as a foundation for your life?
Are you Shia?
I am.
Yes, I noticed from the...
I'm not
necklace.
practicing though.
You're not a practicing Shia?
No, not very
So you're
much.
a cultural Shia?
Pardon?
You're a cultural Shia Muslim?
Yeah, I'm not the best. So my point is, what does this matter? Legally wise, people should have the right to do what they want. The state should not involve itself with what people do. What the everyday British person does is their own business. If they want to have an abortion, let them have an abortion. Morality is not law. The law is not good nor evil. The law is the law. And fundamentally, you need to respect the law as it is. And so if someone wants to get an abortion, respect their choice to. Because as a representative democracy, the people have allowed for abortion and the people accept for it.
I've got a question. Do you have the right to punch me in the face right now?
Legally, I do not.
Okay. Do you think you should?
Well, I wouldn't punch you in the face because I respect the freedom of speech and you're allowed to discuss
So
what you
there are
want
certain things that you're limited to because of the law, right?
Exactly.
Okay,
However,
so absolute autonomy doesn't work.
well, my point is that the legal system has allowed for abortion since, I'm not sure when, but it's been over like 30
How long were
years.
you allowed slaves in America?
Well, that was over 300 years ago, and that was a different
Okay,
time
but there was
context.
still a considerable
And
amount of
if you
time
think
to
about-
which slavery was legalized.
Okay, but if you think about it, that law wasn't legitimate. The law became legitimate when Abraham Lincoln cancelled it because it had the vote, the consent
But they had
of
to
the
introduce
people.
the amendment just before the uniting of the Confederates. So, in fact, it is in the law, and it was, in fact, a reinterpretation of the law that would enable the fact of the reading that we're all made equal, every citizen is equal, and they all have the same rights. So I'm going to ask you this question again. Just because something is institutionalized, does it make it right?
I completely agree with you. The law doesn't mean something is good or evil. The law is the law, fundamentally. So it might be wrong, but you shouldn't be stopping people from
So
acting.
you're arguing from legality, even though that doesn't
Exactly.
prove that abortions are good or not?
I wouldn't want someone I know have to experience the emotional turmoil of having an abortion. It's not fair on them. It's not fair
Did you
on
know it's also
anyone.
not fair?
But I agree.
Women that are coerced because of the society they live in, that are convinced that abortions are the only viable option when they have children.
Well, that's due
because
to
you know,
finance.
actually, there was a study in the States that found that you're 4 times more likely, if you're the victim of rape, to kill yourself if you have an abortion. Do you know why? It's because the study considers that people that have abortions don't always want them, but rather believe they have to have them.
Unfortunately, I don't know the study you're referring to, but I would love to read
Okay.
up on it. So
So-
could you
if you DM me
source it?
privately on Twitter, I can send you the study. However, the reason why the outcome of that study is because women are now growing in a society that teach them that abortion is a preventative measure towards the responsibility of consensual sex. Therefore, although someone may actually believe that there is an intrinsically valuable life that they are harboring, they still believe they have to abort it because of the society that they live in. So openly allowing for abortions, like for example, the new Labour reform that enabled abortions up until delivery, harbour a society that make us believe that abortion is a valid response towards promiscuous sex.
In the UK, I don't think you can have an abortion until birth unless the life of the mother is at risk.
You will not be arrested. Right now, you will not be arrested if you have an abortion, a back-gay abortion, up until
the states and the NHS won't do it unless...
The NHS won't, but you can have it right now. Backstreet abortion, you won't get arrested for murder. I think that's wrong.
Well, to be fair though, it is... Okay, so your reasoning for this is because you believe it's a life and that...
Do you believe it's a life? I don't think it's a matter of belief. I think it's a matter of observation.
You were referring to the harm principle, which I completely agree with.
Like, okay, your cells don't have a heartbeat, but yet they're still living.
If you think about it, I'm gonna give an analogy. A virus isn't considered a living thing because it needs a host system.
So
why?
No, firstly,
why is this
typically
different?
viruses aren't of the same genus and species. Could you give me an example of a virus being of the same species as the host?
No, you can't do that.
Of course, because that's not the
I'll give
definition
you
of a
that
virus.
one.
Secondly, you don't need a heartbeat to be considered living. Like, have you ever had dead skin scales on your surface of your body?
Yes, we need to remove them all.
Of course. So there's a difference between living and dead, and it's not
people.
determined on heartbeat. It's something else.
I agree, but then...
Okay, so do you agree it's living?
It's different to a virus.
Okay,
yes,
so
I
it's
really
living,
agree.
it's not a virus. Is it human?
No.
So what species is it?
I don't think it's considered a species until birth.
Yes, it is. Okay, so let me get this right. A mother is currently right now begetting something that it doesn't really have a species. Everything has a species. A tree has a species of whatever tree it is, like an oak tree or whatever. You have the species of being human. A cat has a species of whatever cat breed, and it is a cat. So categorically, it has to be something. So what is it?
It's a fetus. It's not being
a
fully
fetus is the
performed.
name which reflects its stage of development.
Yes.
I am considered an adolescent, but I'm still human. This adult here is reflecting the stage of development that he's at, typically being above the age of 18, but he's still human. A fetus is a stage of development. It is still, regardless, human. So, it is human, we agree. It is living, we agree. It's not a virus, you agree. So why do we not value it?
Well, simply put, it takes away from the liberty and freedom of the individual. Should the individual not be allowed to pick their own future? Should the individual not be allowed to have manifested destiny, pick the routes they want to go down along? Does the individual not have the right to act? You're putting that awfully close to my face. Could you just shove it? Thank you.
So you understand, right, that
it's just a bit too close.
You understand that liberty doesn't really play, right?
I may not. I apologize.
Like I said before, the state always controls your liberty. You can't rob a bank. You can't punch me. You can't rape anyone here. So again, that argument doesn't work. We already agree to all the things that value a human life to survive. So why do you believe in abortion?
No, but there's a difference. Those laws have the consent of the majority. They have legitimacy through democracy.
Do you believe if the majority of people believe in rape, we should legalize rape?
No, I wouldn't want that.
Okay, so liberty isn't determined off democracy then?
No, but... So, if I'm speaking into this, can you not hear me?
If you speak quietly, it'll still pick up your voice, yeah.
Okay. So, from what I'm arguing, I'm saying that it needs the consent of the people, and so sometimes, well, unfortunately, we have bad things happen because the law is not good nor evil.
So if the majority of people
morality
believe in rape,
does not...
you believe that we should be able to legalize rape?
No, I do not. My point is, morality isn't in the law. I wouldn't want that. The law isn't moral. The law does not have
legality
feelings.
is simply a downstream of morality. What
why
societies
is that?
conventionally consider immoral is what we typically institute within law.
No, that's not necessarily true.
Okay, besides from the fact that, if we were to speak about rape, the reason why we believe rape is wrong is because it's not consensual sex. The reason why we believe that's wrong is because of more morality. Without morality, at least either agreed upon naturally or through God or through conventions, there is no reason why you would institute laws that include taking your liberties out on someone else, including assaulting people, sexually assaulting people, raping stealing their things. These are all things that we come to the conclusion of because of our morality. Now, if you disagree with that fact, then you would agree that through a democracy, we would either criminalize or decriminalize these things, in which case we could potentially live in a society that if the Overton window were to split, that rape could be legalized, which is wrong, of course.
Completely agree. Rape
Incredibly
is
backwards.
completely wrong. But yeah, I think if Parliament voted to criminalize abortion, then I could see your perspective. That's just my personal opinion.
So you
I
don't
think,
actually believe in anything. You're just like a hive mind that goes with the flow.
Yes, I love the Supreme Overlords, kiss Starmer, go off Starmer, you know?
Yeah.
But that's a joke, I don't...
Well, like, you're just saying let's lead it up to democracy. But you're involved in a democracy. You're a voter. How old are you?
I'm 19.
Okay, you're 19, you can vote.
Technically, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So get involved with people you disagree with. And then you can kind of vote accordingly.
I agree. I personally wouldn't have an... What is that?
An average day in Manchester, everyone.
It is. It's fantastic. No, I completely agree. I wouldn't want to have an abortion. I find it... Personally, I find it quite sad and, well, quite horrific for a woman to experience it. I know a lot of women regret it afterwards, and I wouldn't want that on anyone. But I understand that people have the right to choose their own failures. They have the right to follow these.
I don't think there's certain things that people can choose. I don't think people should be able to choose whether they commit crimes or
Well,
not.
that we will have to disagree on then. But
Well,
yeah,
I was a pleasure speaking to you.
It was lovely talking to you.
Abortion is kind of this blocking towards a lot of things within your life. Starting a family and having one partner, one husband, one wife. And all of the other reasons for why someone would have an abortion reduces down to eugenics, this concept that we value someone arbitrarily based on things that we discriminate against. One of the other arguments I like to lean into is the theological argument for abortion. Theos in Greek just means purpose, and the purpose of sexual reproductive organs, I don't think any crazy person would tell you otherwise, is to reproduce. And common example within literature is like a cake, right? So like you put cake mix in an oven, halfway through it being turned into an actual cake, it's solidifying, you take it out the oven and you destroy it.
Well, that wasn't a cake yet. It's like, well, it would have been. If you didn't do what you just did, there would have been a cake in 50 minutes. Something happened to that cake, you cake murdering son of a bitch.
Well, it'd be considered immoral or at least wasteful to do that, so why do it? In the same case of abortion, if the purpose of a sexual reproductive organ is to reproduce, then if it's already undergone the means to the end, which is reproduction, why stop it? It's a common argument that really doesn't have any refutation on the ground, besides from you trying to argue that sexual reproductive organs only really has the purpose of being pleasure. Well, no, that's just an incentive. If sex was really unpleasurable and it was quite something that we try to always put off, we wouldn't have so many children to kind of replace the working older generation, which you're kind of seeing in Japan and South Korea, and that's why you have so many migrants more coming into this country, because they can't really replace the younger generation to, you know, kind of take care of the elderly. If you want to have exclusive content, we'll slowly be posting all this lovely stuff on the Cross and Corner site at crossandcorner.org. Go onto the membership page and you'll be able to get exclusive videos. All of the money that you give, and either in donations or membership, will be exclusively funneled into the activism, both paying interns and contributors, and also affording travel and graphic design such as the ones you're seeing in both Camden Town and Manchester. Aside from that, I've been Young Bob. This is the Sideshow Bob, and have a blessed Halloween.